Welcome in to another Mariners vlog here. I'm James Boy Howdy Osborne, alongside Shannon Drayer, 710sports.com, 710 ESPN Seattle Mariners reporter. Shannon, how are you today?
Not bad, although I'm pretty irked at Taylor right now. Taylor is behind the scenes, so he'll check out after about 30 seconds once we're up and running.
Well, you have to be irked. He ate a bunch of Dick's burgers.
You know why I'm angry.
And we can't eat because I'd be burping through this whole video.
Well, he didn't tell us that they were upstairs. I assumed that he went up the hill and got some burgers. He had the whole spread out in the control room. Oh, look at that. Nice.
Also joining us today for our video is plush doll Russell Wilson.
He doesn't eat hamburgers.
In honor of his 5-for-8 performance in the Pro Bowl where the NFC team got smashed by the AFC. So, with that nonsense out of the way, let's get down to some business. The Mariners have made a little bit of noise and had made a couple of moves.
They have.
Tell us about them.
We have trade number 74, and I forgot to put tape on it. Otherwise, you could go put it up on the board that no longer exists on the Brock Eward whiteboard. But we're not gonna do that. But we do. We have a trade number 74 made by Jerry Dipoto. Josh Stowers for Shed Long. And so it was prospect for prospect. And the thing that I love about this deal is, A, the Mariners, and I typed it into a story, and I'm like, wow. I just typed that they traded from an area of strength in the minor leagues.
How about that?
That one was a little rusty.
That's a new one.
Dust that one off right there. A lot of outfielders, not just because they're developing them right now, because they're bringing them in. You bring in Malik Smith, Mitch Haniger's not going anywhere. Jay Bruce, we're going to see him play some outfield, but in the minor leagues, of course, Kyle Lewis is coming along, and you've just got, Braden Bishop is there. They made some acquisitions with the trades. Your favorite, Dom Tom. Williams is down there as well. So I think I counted there were like 5 potential in the next year or two that could come up and play, and we had players that were blocked. And so what they did is they moved for a player that they desperately needed, and huge area of weakness in the minors right now.
You've been talking quite a bit about the Mariners' need for middle infield
not
depth
just
at the
middle,
top.
I mean, any third base as well. So you brought in Shed Long. And what's interesting here is if you've seen any of the tapes on him, if you're watching any of the video, if you've heard the talks, it doesn't look like your conventional ball player.
Short.
Looks a little like you, Howdy.
Well, that's not a good thing to say, Shannon. You shouldn't talk down about a guy before he even puts the uniform on.
But one of the things that Dipoto was stressing with him was athletic, and I had to kind of explain that athletic comes in different forms. Sometimes it's because you can run to record speed and to first base, or your sprint speed was up, and I should have pulled that up too. We'll talk about that really quickly.
Well, I do appreciate that you thought he was like me in being so athletic. That I appreciate.
There's sometimes surprises. You never know. But I think that this was more about his positional versatility and athleticism and being able to play different positions. And it sounds like, after all of that and going through that this guy they think is going to be able to play all these positions, what they really value, and this is talking to a number of people a number of different times, is the bat. And if you look at him, he's more of a C-to-Z player, no question about it.
More of a control the zone type,
he's
identifying pitches.
AAA to start. He hasn't been in AA. He hasn't been much past AA, but they like what they see from him at the plate. So this is a guy that they are hoping has that positional versatility, so they can get him in the lineup every day, moving him around. We've heard Dipoto talk about wanting to have a Marwin Gonzalez type, where he could play at a different position every day. I think they're going to try and develop him into that, but we'll have to see.
So ultimately, it sounds like you really like this deal.
I really like this deal because you got a higher ranked prospect in a position that you needed more, and one that's closer to the big leagues. So, and you've still got all of the control that you normally would have. So I think it was a nice deal. It reminded me a little bit of the Tyler O'Neill and Marco Gonzalez, where you traded, both teams were trading good prospects, good players that, easily could be on their big league rosters, but they didn't have as much room for them, or they had other answers. So I kind of look at it that way.
It's a very, very Jerry Dipoto type of trade. Very Jerry Dipoto. I'm getting rid of something that has a lot of question mark about it because Josh Stowers is so much further away from the league, who probably has a higher upside as more of a 5-tool type of a player. But I'm going to get back a guy who probably has a higher floor, not necessarily as high of a ceiling, and I'm going to be able to see the results of that trade much sooner than I would if I kept Josh Stowers. So it's not my kind of deal because I think we've talked before on these podcasts and vodcasts I would rather see them take more flyers on big-time potential guys, because if you hit on those, that's a core you can build off to me. I feel more comfortable that way, but I understand why they make this move.
Not every young player is going to be that guy, and because I think they've made some moves that they feel good about, they don't have to go as hard after that right now. And so, you know, you are going to fill out a roster with guys who are just good. And I think that they believe that, you know, the ceiling isn't going to be as high as a superstar player, but they've got a lot of confidence that this guy is going to get to that ceiling. That's what I'm getting from them. So,
corresponding move here, they have to send a player off of the 40-man roster. What's that look like?
That made another trade look, I can't remember. I think this was a meh trade. I think we may have argued a little bit about this trade. But you also added Hunter Strickland as well. So you have a closer and a player who could potentially be very entertaining to cover, too, if you've watched any of the videos.
Yeah, a fiery guy, a fiery reliever.
Guy, which I think is what you want at the back end. I'm good with fiery closer back into the bullpen types. A little bit more on that in a second. But they did have to create a roster space, and Max Posey was DFA'd. And this is a guy, and you remember at the time, he was part of trade number 31.
Infamously.
31 from, yeah, the tape is still on the back of this one. That was a trade that was made in November of 2016 with the Braves in Rob Whalen, Max Posey out, Alex Johnson, that's what I get for not wearing the glasses.
Alex
Jackson and Tyler Pike. Tyler Pike, a pitcher, had a 5.87 at Double-A last year.
Not good.
It was a nice process. I mean, but he was somebody that got a little bit of notice.
Yeah, at the time.
At the time, but has not done anything since. Alex Jackson, interesting in that the Braves, of course, moved him back to his original position of catcher, did very well in A-ball when they initially made that move, did not do well at all last year, 201 average between Double-A and Triple-A, pretty much played a full season. So I know that, you know, Rob Whalen's a great story, and I think people like a little bit of what they've seen. I don't, you know, he's not on the 40 right now. I do not see him having an impact. And now Max Posey, who is somebody that they had hoped would be a part of this rotation. You look at the guy, big guy, strong guy.
6'7", 240, big dude.
Yeah.
Has not at all reached the capacity of what they thought
if
he
he
would be.
clears waivers, I have to wonder, although, you know, you still have all of your time with him if he clears waivers, maybe you do keep him in that starting role, but at what point do you look at the bullpen?
Well, they tried that even at the major league level right away, thinking that he was going to be lightning in a bottle.
They thought he would be the Definsky. They thought that maybe you could use the multiple innings, but why don't you look at him for one inning and see what you've got right there? He reminds me a lot in personality and maybe perhaps career path a little bit of Brandon Maurer. And that was a good move for Maurer to go to the pen. And, you know, if you're going to get something out of him, maybe that's where you can best utilize him. But we'll see what happens. First, he has to clear waivers. So trade number 31, I think, remains in the meh if we had it there. I think you started to put it in the bad, and I said, whoa, 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 Jackson hasn't done anything.
Yeah. Yeah,
So.
I thought Jackson would be a little bit more of a prospect. I mean, he's now at AAA at the age of 22, so there's probably something there still. But
there's the news. The one thing, and I wish I had brought it with me, I had looked at the beginning of the season because I was trying to, off-season, because I was trying to get a gauge of how much, actually, we're going to stop. I'm going to tell you what's coming up before you tune out. We had so much fun with the 73, now 74 trades and the Brock Heward whiteboard over there that we're going to get out the whiteboard again a little bit later in the show. And what we're going to look at today is, you know, last week was kind of like the big tour week for the Mariners. There were all sorts of Mariners in town, all sorts of press conferences, the pre-spring training press conference, just different things. The manager was out talking to groups all around the state, and I think I spent every day but one last week doing something Mariner with actual Mariners, players, managers, GMs, things like that. So a lot of stuff. But one of the things that really jumped out at me at that spring training press conference, and we've been trying to define what Jerry Dipoto has been trying to do and his vision. I think he defined that window a lot better at the press conference. And now the word is we are going to look to crest in 2020-21.
Crest, all right.
Yes, we're going to look to crest. And we're going to look a little bit at that. And he specifically targeted 3 teams that they thought would be vulnerable in that window, which would help the Mariners move forward. We're going to take a look at where those three teams potentially could be. We're going to look at their salaries, their payrolls. We're going to look at their arbitration-eligible players, who they could lose, who they could bring up, and just try and get a little bit of a picture of what perhaps Dipoto and all of his numbers guys over at Safeco Field, T-Mobile Park.
Oh, you almost did it. You were so close.
Where's the fine jar?
You've done so well so far in the times we've talked about this.
All right, next podcast, I'm wearing my T-Mobile Park T-shirt, of course, in magenta. Now I've totally lost it. We're going to just try and...
we're going to look at the numbers, and we're going to determine whether or not this window, this cresting opportunity, is truly a viable crest.
I'm going to go over to the board now and just draw a big wave in the crest of the wave. Little dolphins jumping
we'll have a little
out.
sun coming up.
What do you think,
like maybe
Russell?
we'll put a piece of paper coming up over, like, representing the sun coming up over the sunrise of the sunset.
There you go.
Like the little
Yeah,
cresting
like the
of
little surfer on the
cresting
little,
the
like on a
mountains.
ruler. We could like kind
Yeah,
of just move them across.
we'll do that.
We're not going to do that.
We
But
won't
we
do
will
that.
get out the board and take a look, a little bit more of an in-depth dive in where those clubs will be. Before we get to that, what I was trying to tell you is at the beginning of the offseason, I was trying to get a really good gauge on how much the broken toes hurt this club last year. You know, Kyle Seager had one, D. Gordon had one, and obviously that had to hurt D, but speed is so important to D's game, and I really wanted to get a good look at just how much slower was he and what impact did that have. And it took a while. I don't think these numbers came out until recently for last year, but the sprint speed on, I think Baseball Savant has them, and it was a really interesting thing to look at. And without breaking it down too much, they get what a sprint speed is. They toss out all the nonsense, like if Robinson Cano is dogging it to first base because he knows he's got to hit, they're taking that out. If it's a sure out, they're taking it out. It's a foot speed from first to second, basically, with everything else that's taken out of it. And it was pretty funny because we finally got those numbers, and I saw the entire club. Who do you think was your slowest Mariner last year?
Oh, the slowest Mariner on the team? I'm going to go
Get
with...
this right, I will give you a Dick's hamburger.
Oh, you're going to give me free Dick's hamburgers? I'm going to go
Taylor's got one in his
with
backpack.
Nelson Cruz.
Wrong.
Oh, come on.
Hamburger
That's got to
is
be a
safe.
good guess.
Robinson Cano.
Robinson.
Who do you think was the second slowest?
Well, it's not Nelson Cruz. You're also giving me that. So let's go Kyle Seager.
Kyle Seager was your second slowest Mariner. Who was your third slowest?
David Freitas. Oh, he's pretty fast. Probably not him. I don't know. I'm stumped.
Nelson Cruz. Who was your fourth slowest?
D. Gordon.
I don't remember actually who fourth was, but fifth was a player that was near and dear to your heart.
Mike Zunino.
Pretty good speed
Wow,
for a
good
catcher.
for him.
Not bad. Not bad at all. How
Yeah,
about
three old guys and a guy you don't remember.
faster
We're
than
slower
Seager,
than him.
Cruz, and Cano.
Nice.
And they
Good. Good
let
for
him go.
him.
They let him
And
go.
he's out in Tampa
Fastest
Bay.
Mariner. You're not gonna get this.
I'm not going to get this.
You're not gonna get this.
The fastest Mariner on the club last season, sprint speed,
Sprint speed.
was Guillermo Heredia.
No.
Okay, good, because he's a bad base stealer.
It's fast, bad base runner.
Was not Denard Span. He's old.
But we love him anyway.
Yeah, but he was really old. Cameron Maybin.
No, that would be a good guess though.
Okay, thank you.
Christopher Negron.
Oh, really? I didn't realize he had speed.
Yeah.
I knew he was like a...
It was
you
good
know,
speed. And D. Gordon was second, and he was about a half a foot off of what he was the year before.
Okay.
Going
So
back to
that's
what I
not
was
much.
looking for, it's not much. So make
So-
of that what you will.
So your statistical analysis confirms that the broken toe issue did not necessarily affect his sprint speed.
I don't
for the
know.
second
After
half
when
of
I
the
saw
season.
that, I decided I didn't want to look at it
Now
any
we're
further.
gonna
And I was just
distrust
going
the
for the
entire
pure
nature of-
entertainment that your
Okay.
catcher
All
was
right.
not your slowest person by far on the
Here
team.
is statistical evidence, but we don't know the process. We don't exactly know how they measure
No,
it.
you know
and
what?
we can't validate
Actually, I will say this, because with Gordon's toe, the biggest problem was stopping and starting. Once he got going, he was fine.
it. Well, it certainly impacted his contact. If we're to believe that this impacted his play,
Right.
it certainly impacted his hard
it
hit
wasn't
contact.
so much the speed that was the problem, it was the going and the contact.
Explosiveness.
Explosiveness, and man, if he has a turnaround, and I've been told the toes are all just great right now.
Okay.
I've also been told we're going to see kind of a different Kyle Seager, and I did see one picture on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or something where he's kind of in the background where he does look a little bit smaller. They had him working differently this year. We've talked quite a bit about the pitchers getting older and having to change how they do things. Happens to position players as well. So it'll be interesting to hear about his routine when we finally get to see him in spring training. He's a guy that kind of stays off the map a little bit in the off season, and good for him. He deserves it. But
like we do with all these things, we're going to have to take it with some grain of salt.
Absolutely.
I mean, Felix Hernandez has been through how many different programs in the off seasons that we thought he's really going to transform his body. It's going to make a big difference.
Well, I think the last couple of years that was hope, not thought. I thought that was hope. But
we'll see. I'm going to go we'll see on that one.
I'm right there with you.
I'm holding out hope.
Yep. But it's good to know that, hey, you're not doing the same thing, because we know what that means. There's just a futility that goes with that. And we will move on to one more topic before we get to the whiteboard. Edgar Martinez went into the Hall of Fame. Did you hear about that?
Yes. Yes, I heard about that. And if it weren't for my baby sister getting married that same weekend, I would have been in Cooperstown for the first time in my life, because Edgar Martinez is far and away my favorite athlete in Seattle sports history. He was the first star that I actually connected with when I was a kid, when I was 3 or 4 years old.
Wow.
I used to watch baseball games with my dad and my mom, and they taught me some of the players on the team, and I learned Edgar. I used to call him Edger because he played on the edge of the field, and I didn't know anyone named Edgar. I didn't think that was a name, so he's Edger to me when I was growing up. But he's also one of the only pieces of memorabilia I have signed from somebody is a paper plate that somebody in my dad's youth group got him to sign for me that I still have. It's sitting on my workbench at home in my garage. I look at it every day. My wife's tried to throw it out like 5 times. I won't let her do it. But yeah, it's one of the few things that I hold in high regard for sports memorabilia.
For you, I mean, 10 years, it was just painful to actually have to watch him go through the disappointment of not getting it. But for me, his story, I think, was fully told. And I think that that was a benefit of those 10 years. And I think it was that much more fulfilling almost that happened, that he finally, and when the announcement came, and a few minutes before the announcement, I mean, we knew, I think at that point, the numbers, he had the numbers. But when MLB Network broke away to their 87th commercial before they got to this, the extra one where it was time to do this, it was like that little bit of doubt. Is there any way? Is there any way that this doesn't happen? But it was, you know, he's such a great person and such a great ball player. And it's just great to see that living up in the corner of the country, without the exposure, particularly back then, without very much interleague play for him either at that time. It's funny because I would talk to writers around the league, and there were writers from National League teams, no idea who he was. Why would you even consider him being a Hall of Famer? So to have the conversations and the education, and people, I think, learned a lot about numbers that they didn't know. I can think of some national writers that I lobbied with in person that I would bring up some of the numbers that are much more well-known now, like 5 years ago, no idea what I was talking about. And I think it's just kind of a part of a re-education, an eye-opening, a different way to look at the game, and I think he's kind of been part of pushing that forward, unintentionally.
That's amazing. I think it's an amazing accomplishment. I think it's long overdue. I'm personally really satisfied because I felt like I had a connection. And I think a lot of people in the city felt like they connected with Edgar Martinez in a way that I think few sports stars have had the ability to connect with fans in their cities. I think he meant a lot. I mean, I just think that there's a lot of personal sort of vindication our city can feel on behalf of Edgar Martinez getting in, especially the way he did. And I love that you brought up the poetic justice of him having to wait so long to get in. It's just like his career getting started. He had to wait so long to get onto the field in the major leagues. I think it's pretty cool.
Well, I'll give you 2 stories. I have 3, but the third one I only tell in person. I don't write or anything else. But some behind-the-scenes stories of Edgar. I remember the first spring training that I covered. It was 2002. And I went into the clubhouse for the first time, and I remember going down there. Really, I had no idea how any of it worked. I'd never been in a spring training clubhouse before. They can be intimidating in that you don't have 25 players. You usually have about 60 in a room that's half the size, and you don't know as many because a lot of them are the minor leaguers, the new guys, the extra guys, the AAA guys and whatnot. And I remember standing outside the door ready to go into that clubhouse. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to walk in. All of a sudden I felt 2 arms, one on either side of my shoulders. They're not Edgar. It was Mike Cameron and Arthur Rhodes.
Really?
Come on, Shannon, let's go.
Wow.
Walked me through the clubhouse, and that was just fantastic because it was like, okay, if they don't know who I am, these 2 are helping. You know, if they've got arms around me as I'm walking through the clubhouse,
pretty cool.
That gives me a little bit of credibility, which is great. The other thing that I did, and I will get to the Edgar, all these memories are coming back. I think a couple of years later, kind of the same thing. You get that anxiety the first time you walk in there. Not so much now, but those first few years. And I remember walking into the clubhouse, and there were just people everywhere. And I walked into the back hallway just to try and get out of it. And all of a sudden, all the coaches came out of their office. There had been a meeting. And I'm not just talking about big league. Every organizational coach, everybody from the minor leagues. And it was just back, forth, and my head's spinning. Who's that? Who's that? And I look up, and somebody looks down at me and smiles. And I put my hand out. I'm like, hi, I'm Shannon. And he looks down. I'm Alvin Davis. I'm like, of course you are. Just,
oh, wow.
Yeah, a little bit of a problem when you've got 100 people in a clubhouse and your head is spinning a little bit. Doesn't happen as much anymore. The Edgar story is my first spring training. I was standing in the hallway by the manager's office, which opens up into the clubhouse part. And there was a tiny, tiny little food room. I mean, nowadays they've got their chefs. They've got, it's like a whole cafeteria set up with everything healthy and some bad things, and they're making smoothies in one corner and everything else. Back then, the food room was a tiny room that had two, like, round tables that could hold 6 people. It had counters, and along one counter on the wall was a breakfast cereal dispenser, and they had like 8 different kinds of breakfast cereals.
Come on.
A barely industrial fridge on the end where there's like orange juice and milk. A soup pot, you know, like, serve yourself soup.
Yeah, like a cauldron.
Like a cauldron that's plugged in, an electric cauldron, and that was about it. And some blenders. And that was the food room.
For the record, that would have been good enough for me. I would have been set for life. Like, that sounds amazing. But go ahead.
It's much better now. But Edgar every morning would go into the food room, and he would have, his baseball pants on and his T-shirt, and you could see, I mean, he was just huge. And he worked out like you wouldn't believe, and he still does. I mean, you hear stories from on the road, anybody who goes to work out in the hotels that we're in, and Edgar will be in there just putting everybody to shame, going 120% on the treadmill, running with the barbell, the dumbbells, and just getting after it like you wouldn't believe. But back then it was just, from one workout to hitting to this to the other. He is every minute that they were not out on the field, he was doing something. But he would walk into that room and make himself a protein shake. And so you'd see him put the stuff into the blender, turn it on, and he would come out. And I looked, and he walked by once, and he had it in the cup, and I'm like, what you got in there, Edgar, a steak? And he looked at me, and he's like, it's good. And I looked at it, and it was just this awful, muddy, gray, just terrible color. Awful. And I'm just like, I don't think so. And so the next day I'm standing out there, he goes into the food room, comes out, he does his little shake, blends it, you hear the blender going. He comes out, he's got his, and he's got a cup with the extra in it. He's like, it's good, try it. And I tried it, and man, I can tell you, he just lost all concept of what good was at that point. I mean, he had been just, protein shake and whatever he had, healthy eating and everything, just no idea. It was terrible. But he thought it was fantastic, and that really kind of opened my eyes to, this poor guy and the work that he puts in and the sacrifices that he makes.
Committed
I'm going to go get my steak later, and I'm going to hit up, In-N-Out and everything else, but nope, not Edgar. Awesome. The other one, and this is going to sound a little bit sappy, but there are times where when you travel with the team and you're around the team, as much as I am, I'm not part of the team. Sometimes a little bit of a we will sneak in because I'm part of the traveling party. So if something happens and we're held up for 6 hours in Minnesota, we went through this. That'll be it. But the rest of it, I'm not. Anybody who, until you set foot on the field and get a hit or take a ground ball or, even tape up a guy's ankles, anything that's going to help them, get a win, you're not part of that team. There's a definite definition. But you watch that team and that team building, and it extends past the players to your trainers and your coaches and everyone else. And Edgar gave me a little moment of just kind of feeling what it is like to be his teammate. Before his final game that he played, I had to get an interview with him, a taped interview with him. And it was 2004, I was 1 year into traveling in full time. It was something that I did so much research for. I didn't want to screw this up. His final radio interview before he retired. I wanted to get this right. So I spent a lot of time on it, and I did a lot of research, and I took a ton of notes. And I wrote things down on note cards that I wanted to do with the interview, which is not the way I ever go. You know, now, and it's not for you young kids out there, it's not a good way. Know your subject, but put all that aside when you start out. When you get too into your notes, you're not listening. You want a back and forth. You know, if he says something that sparks a question, go with it. Don't go back to your cards. That's kind of the growth in that one. But I wanted those cards, and they gave me a lot of confidence in the work that I did. We set up an interview. I think it was in Minnesota. It could have been somewhere else. And it was going to be between batting practice and when the game started. And we had a specific time for it. And, you know, for 2 days, okay, you're going to be here at this time, you're going to be here at this time. And so the day of the interview, I'm all ready for it. And I'm just really kind of trying to pump myself up for it, going over my notes and everything. I go downstairs to do the stuff before they take batting practice. Edgar sees me. He's like, hey, can we do that interview right now? And I'm like, no, we were going to do it, you know, an hour and a half from now. He's like, yeah, but now would be better. I'm like, trying to talk him out of it because I don't have my notes. And I wanted these notes. And I finally said, Edgar, my notes are upstairs. Can I run and get them? And he looked at me and he said, Shannon, you don't need those notes. You are a good reporter. You don't need them. And for a second, I thought to myself, well, darn it, if Edgar Martinez doesn't think I need those notes, I must not need those notes. And it really kind of took me back to what I'd heard younger players, even veteran players, people like Mike Blowers and Jay Buhner say, that this guy gave everybody confidence around them. And he gave advice that people were able to take out on the field. And just for that one split second, I felt what I think his teammates felt having him around. He helped me through that interview, which went just fine. He helped them at the plate as well. So that's something that will always stick with me, just one little glimmer of what it was like to be a teammate. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Great stories, a great Mariner, a legend in baseball, finally recognized for his accomplishments. So hat tip to Edgar. You're the best. Thanks, Edgar. We'll wrap that up. Let's move on to our exercise.
All right.
Let's bring out the old technology.
All right, this is what we got here. At the pre-spring training press conference, Jerry Dipoto, and I wrote on this because it was something that I was interested in. What exactly do they mean in targeting 2020-2021? And there was a statement that he made that really jumped out at me, and we're going to get a little bit into it. I'm just going to go verbatim right here. We especially use 2021 as a target date, just looking at the league around us and how their rosters are built. Looking at the Houston Astros specifically, the Boston Red Sox, Cleveland Indians, we felt that by 2021, either by free agency age or looking at their systems, that was the time on the calendar year where maybe they would be more susceptible to being caught than they are right now. We view 2021 as that championship-type window if we did this the right way. Let me repeat, if we did this the right way. He's not guaranteeing that 2021 is when they are going to win a championship. But the hope is they will be competing for it, which would mean by 2021 they want to be in the playoffs in the postseason.
If they're not in the playoffs in the postseason by then, it'll be a new group of people making those decisions.
That's how it works in baseball. Building around a group that was from an age perspective in a window that allowed us to crest in 2021. So what I wanted to do is take a look at where the Mariners are, where the Astros are, where the Red Sox and Indians are in 2021. With the Mariners, most figures, and I've taken are from Cott's Baseball. The Mariners stuff I've done a little bit more on my own, but Cott's Baseball on Baseball Prospectus is pretty much, I think, the best place. There are a bunch of places that you can pick up numbers, but if you want something pretty general, that's a good place to go. To see where payrolls are, to see what player contracts are, to see where future commitments are. It's all in one place. It's great to use in most of these numbers.
I use Spot Track as well.
Spot Track works as well. So just whatever, those are two spots where you can get those numbers anytime that you like. If you were wondering, last year the Mariners opened the season at $158 million. They finished at $171. On Cots, I'm not sure if it's the same on Spot Track, the opening salaries that they list or payrolls that they list are for the 25-man roster. The closing that they list are for the full 40-man, and so a couple of other numbers come into that, insurance numbers and things like that, as well as your extra 40-man players, but most of that actually is salary. So the Mariners jumped from 158 to 171. That 171 was good for the 10th highest payroll in baseball last year. If you're wondering, that's up 2 spots from 2017, up 5 spots from 2016 when they had the 15th highest payroll. So I think we've kind of acknowledged before, a lot of their failures have not been due to payroll. It's how they're spending that money. They've had decent payrolls for where they are, which is basically a true mid-market team. So that's where they were at the end of last year. Mariners' high, if you were wondering, was 6th in 2007. They had the 6th highest payroll in baseball. Their second best mark was 2008, where they had the 8th highest payroll in baseball. Do you remember what distinction they had in 2008 with their payroll? First team to spend $100 million and lose 100 games. So again, it's not always the money you spend. It's how you spend it. So just some interesting notes on Mariners' payrolls history. On the books in 2018, the Mariners right now have $44.75 million. So they have almost $45 million committed in 2021.
Okay,
yes.
2021. They have how much? Give me that number one more time.
4475.
44.75. Okay, got it.
Notable arbitration players, because that is not included in this figure right here. Marco Gonzalez will be hitting arbitration for the first time.
Okay.
That'll be significant. Mitch Haniger will be an ARB 2 player that year. That will be significant, assuming that they haven't locked him up to a bigger deal at that point. Ryan Healy, if he is still with the club, will be a second-year arbitration. Malik Smith will be second-year arbitration. So we've got some significant salaries coming back in arbitration for the Mariners that will be added. Narvaez will be...
Narvaez?
Sure. Second-year arbitration eligibility. J.P. Crawford, first-year eligibility. And Domingo Santana, third year.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's on the club.
Yeah.
What do you see when you look at that list? I mean, there are dollars that are going to add there, but what do you see when you look at that list?
Well, these are probably supposed to be your best players. So in that sense, it's nice that they're still under team control, that they're not free agents by this time. You haven't lost anybody in your core to free agency up to this point either. What I do see is a lack of serious star power here. They've got a bunch of guys who I would say are on the above average side as a ceiling. All-star potential, maybe an all-star potential.
Haniger finished 11th in MVP mode.
This is the only one that's outside that category. Haniger has the potential in this category to be one of those elite star, transcendent, maybe not transcendent, but a guy who, roster to roster, would be one of the best players on their team. So to me, this is a good group of above-average type guys who are still under 30 years old with 1 star in it.
Okay.
That's what I see.
All right. Take a look at notable potential losses by the 2021 season. That'd be nobody.
None. Okay.
Okay. That's your Mariners right there. Your Astros finished the year at $160 million last year. I'm sorry, started the year at 160, finished at $187 million.
Big payroll.
That is a big number. That is a huge jump for
that is
7th in baseball. They were 19th and 18th the previous 2 years. So they are just now jumping up and spending. Part of that is a TV contract that they had a heck of a time getting.
Another part of that is them sitting on money for about 6 years.
Well,
they sat on payroll money for a long time.
They were 19th and 18th the previous 2 years before this year, 27th, 29th, 30th, and 27th before that.
They went down to the studs.
They took this thing down to 20. They had $26 million the first year that they started this in payroll.
They spent payroll $26 million.
They got into a little bit of trouble because they were taking revenue sharing too, if I remember correctly on that. So for those who are saying this Mariners thing is a tear it to the studs, they're at about $144 million right now. This is nothing like what the Houston Astros did.
2011 or so we're probably looking at. About 2011, they spent less money than the Dodgers had spent on Clayton Kershaw.
Like 20, Might be 12, but yeah.
For 1 year.
Yeah, so they really...
Perspective.
Right, right. So this is not, make no mistake, that's not what the Mariners are doing right now.
And that does lend to how long can the Astros do this? If they needed to sit on money for 5 years in order to be able to crack the top 5 to 10, how much longer can they sustain that?
They have added revenue in the TV deal that they have. They also have had very good attendance thanks to winning, but that is a fair question. That is a huge jump to go from 18th, 19th to 7th highest payroll. So that is something worth taking a look at. They have $29 million committed in 2021, a lot of that going to Altuve.
Okay.
Notable arbitration players,
Okay.
Osuna will be ARB 3. He's making $6.5 million this year,
Okay.
so that's going up. Carlos Correa will be ARB 3 as well. He's making $5 million this year. Lance McCullers will be ARB 4. Brad Peacock, if he's still on the roster, I don't think he will be ARB 4. And you've got Alex Bregman. What do you think he's going to make as an ARB 2 player in 2021?
Assuming he doesn't get hurt, he's going to make $30+ million.
Chris Davis got 16.5 in arbitration this year. A's are going to have a hard time with that one. They're paying it, but
Yeah.
these are, just to note, the arbitration salaries appear to be going up dramatically. We've had a lot of talk about what's not happening with the free agents right now. I think not a lot of that money is going because there's a lot of money out there, but I think we're seeing significant increases. We are seeing a lot more of the double-digit arbitration players, and I think we will continue to see that. Bregman's going to be a huge one. Max Stassi, backup catcher.
Whatever.
We're not too worried about him. Then we get to the notable losses for the Astros. Verlander. Michael Brantley. Oops.
Just sign him.
You've got Josh Reddick.
Part-time player for them right now.
Mariners hopefully will not be seeing any more of Garrett Cole.
Holy smokes. Okay.
George Springer, who might be a little bit on the downside
Wow.
right now.
Really?
Yeah, some scouts don't like what they saw from him
Really?
last year.
Well, that's
Yep.
interesting.
Yuli Gurriel.
Okay.
Colin McHugh. And Jake Marisnick.
Okay. What do we see at this at a glance? They are losing some serious pitching if they don't retain them. This guy ages out, so he's no longer a factor. And you're losing a couple of your linchpins in here, especially with Springer, if you don't bring these guys back. On top of that, these guys combined are going to throw together like probably another $80 million, $90 million.
No, not that high.
1, 2, 3. Those 3 guys are going to get top market, whatever their ARB number is. If that's 30 and that's 25.
30 for 1 year. I don't think it's going to go that high.
On his
You think
last
it's
year
gonna
of
go- that's
arbitration?
his second year of arbitration.
Second year? Okay, second year's 20. So let's say this is another $50 million, $55, $60 million. That number is closer actually to.
Say it's much more significant than this.
Yeah. Yeah. This number is bigger than that number. So they've got more on the payroll.
More
They got
holes to
$80 million
fill.
on the payroll.
On the other hand, notable additions that will be coming up.
Oh, okay. We haven't gotten to that over
Yeah,
here.
we
but
didn't
we
do
can
that over there.
Okay.
But they got pitching coming. Forrest Whitley, top 10 prospect,
Okay.
right hand. That's a starter right there. Need outfielders. They got 2 top 50 outfielders that could be ready next year, and Kyle Tucker and Jordan Alvarez.
Tucker.
And you've got 3 right-handed starters, which some will play and some will be traded. So
Okay.
they do have, I think you could have you will have good young arms in that rotation. Will they be ready 2 years in,
Okay.
1 year in for some
All
of
right.
them? So that's something to look at. For the Mariners, Evan White will be a significant add by that time.
People are rising in their praise of him.
Justice Sheffield will have been up for a couple of years at that point. I don't think I add him because I think we'll see him soon enough. Justin Dunn, be it in the rotation or in the bullpen, intrigue, would be there as well. You are getting ever closer to Kelenic and Rodriguez. Too early to, well.
Yeah, probably. If he's a star, then yes, he should be here.
I like your thinking.
And who's the other guy?
Rodriguez.
Oh,
The J-Rod Show.
he may be a little further out. But
These much more established than these three right here.
You get bigger star potential.
They definitely have these, and these guys will be up before 2021, but they should be on that roster in 2021. So of interest there. And Whitley and James, I don't have James on there, but they appear to have potential superstar as starters.
Okay.
So perhaps it doesn't hurt as much to lose Verlander. It doesn't hurt as much to lose Cole, but
yeah,
got to do it at the big league level.
Okay.
Red Sox. Now they're a little bit tough because they're on a different planet when it comes to salary and what they can pay.
Yep. I think they're one of the only two teams in baseball who spent more than $200 million 2 years in a row.
Didn't even write down what they spent this year, but I think when it was all said and done, it was like 233.
Yeah, it was something very big. They're both of the last
108
2 years.
wins, 233 million. They can spend, but this is an organization, we've seen it, they will take the step back. You don't have to look back too far, 13 and 14, to see 71 wins and 78 wins. So if they get to a situation where they age out too much, they can reload pretty quick, but they will take that step back.
They'll have to hit the salary reset button either next year or the following year in order to stay under that luxury tax losing draft picks number. So that's an important thing to remember.
And we'll get to farm systems when we're all done here, but that's a significant comment for what they're looking at right there. So arbitration eligible players, 2 big ones and 1 not so big.
So we don't have their number for what they're in 2021?
Did I forget to look? It was high.
Their 2021 number was high?
86.75.
Yeah, that's high. Okay.
Arbitrations. Eduardo Rodriguez will be arbitration 4. Interesting player. And if he's starting, that'll be a big number.
Okay.
What do you think Andrew Benintendi is going to get as an arbitration 2 player?
$18 million.
Rafael Devers, arbitration 1. It'll be lower because it's arbitration 1.
It's $9 million.
And again, at any time, they could sign these guys to extensions that will wipe that out. But those are numbers that will impact that top number. Not a ton to add to the payroll as compared to Houston, but they're starting at such a higher mark. Notable losses.
Okay.
Mookie Betts, although they've got to sign him to
he'll be signed.
An extension.
But for now.
Chris Sale's a bit of a hit in the rotation, isn't he? Right up until September. Jackie Bradley Jr. and Xander Bogaerts. How do you feel about paying a 35-year-old David Price $32 million in 2021?
Not good.
How do you feel about paying a 36-year-old David Price $32 million in 2022?
Even worse.
Yeah, that's going to bite him. As far as the ads, I really didn't get too into that. I'm just going to say this. Bad farm system. Good farm system. Getting better. Nice. Very nice. And I cannot believe Russell's hung in with us through this.
What a voyeur he's being in this whole process.
He's probably upset that we're
He's
not
just kinda
talking about the Yankees and their prospects.
Staring right down my shirt. I don't appreciate it. Anyways.
Okay, so that is it for your Red Sox right there. I mean, it's hard to look at what they spend and say, are they really going to take a step back? But I think that's going to be key. That might be the year, as Dipoto said, they looked at the rosters and the farms. That might be the year they decide, you know what, we're going to sit this one out. Indians, $134 million opening day this year. They finished 151, 16th highest payroll in baseball.
They are truly a mid-market team.
Yeah,
truly a mid-market team.
They are fortunate enough to be in the AL Central.
I don't even know if they can afford to ever go in the top 10.
Well, look at everything they did last year, and they are looking for salary. I have stepped out of the picture. You move over. We could switch.
Whoa. For those of you who are wondering, Shannon Drayer is here. She just went behind the camera and behind the screen here. So.
Hi, Russell. Yeah, $23 million committed in 2021.
23?
2020. Yes, 23 and 21. Don't argue with me.
Okay.
And let's go ahead and note right now, I mean, this was a playoff team this year that had great pitching, one of the best young players in baseball. They go into this offseason looking to drop salary. They have salary constraints.
Yeah.
The end. Notable arbitrations, Francisco Lindor.
Okay. That's not a guy you want to have as a free agent.
Mike Clevenger.
Not Steve.
Definitely not Steve. Tyler Naquin.
Is he good?
He's useful.
Okay.
Yandy Diaz.
Yeah.
First-year eligibility for Diaz, so it won't be too big. The others are 2 or 3. Notable losses, Carlos Santana.
Okay. Some of the Mariners' current losses.
Yeah, that gets you right here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Corey Kluber. They'll have a $14 million team option, but if they don't want to pay it right now, I don't see it then. I don't understand why, but okay. Getting older.
All right.
Trevor Bauer. He's going to have a fun free agency. And Danny Salazar. So basically a rotation.
Okay.
And they also just qualify as bad farm. But again, they are in the Central, and I would imagine 2021 you are not so much talking about the Indians, you're talking about the White Sox, possibly the Twins.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not even sure I would keep them on this list entirely. But Jerry Dipoto mentioned, right? So.
Yep, didn't mention the Yankees, so I think that's one that...
That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, you don't want to be playing for the wild card, and those are the teams that you're going to be battling a little bit.
Playing with the wild card with these two teams, so.
Yeah, well,
I don't know. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, maybe he thought that they were going, that the window wasn't open for them and what they were doing. Maybe he looked at where they are right now. And
they are just so set.
You cannot put them into the category.
Top to bottom,
the
they're
farm
set.
is just now starting to do this after going through so many prospects, but it's not dramatic by any means. So this is what we've got as far as going forward. And I think that when you look at it, I think the Mariners are going to have a good amount of money to play with. I'm not fooled by this lower number because of this and the spots that they are going to have to fill. Although, with their ads, they could have a built-in rotation, but it's going to be very young.
Yeah. I don't know.
You're just looking for a window right now. It doesn't have to be, he wasn't saying they're going to be atop all of these clubs.
The place that I will accept that this is maybe a window of opportunity is that there are less known quantities in 2021 for these teams than there are this year and next year. This year and next year, you know that the major league products that they field are going to be fielded with guys who are currently in their prime, under team control, and are not prohibiting them from making moves forward. So in that sense, in 2021, when you have to start relying on some of these guys, you can't be positive that they're going to turn out to be what they are. When I look at the chances, this is not enough for me to say that these guys are neck and neck at that time.
Ooh.
That's not enough for me to say, when you add these guys and you keep these guys around, that puts you in the same class as the Astros. Is it a step forward? I absolutely agree. I believe it is a step forward in the direction of competing in 2021.
I think the question that you're going to have to ask is how much are they going to be able to spend? And how much are they going to rely on their younger arms? Because you could trade them and bring back more veteran, more proven.
You could trade any of these guys too before they end up becoming cost prohibitive and add more to this. So there's a lot of factors that could keep these guys at the top. But they are factors. They're things they have to do in order to maintain that level, as opposed to just keep things the way they are and they're at that level, right? So yes, the window starts to open, but the Mariners have a ton of ground to gain, even to compete in 21, in my opinion.
Well, they're going to lose ground. It's hard to say that they won't.
Maybe.
You see a 100-win club,
the only way
100-plus win club?
I believe that they lose ground is that Verlander gets too old to pitch. That's the only thing I am positive that they will lose out on. In 3 years, Justin Verlander will not be as good as he is right now.
Well, he also won't be an Astro.
Yeah, well, I mean, they could re-sign any of these guys. Conceivably, if they keep making money at the gate and they keep competing at the top, I mean, I don't know what their full financial picture is, but you don't have to cut spending traditionally if you're making money at the gate. So if they keep winning, the money aspect of this doesn't matter as much to me. To me, it's, does this group match up with this group? That's where I look at this the most. And right now, you have more star-level potential talent here than you do here. Now, your farm system on the whole may be closer to matching these two teams, but I don't know if you have the star power to overcome some of these studs they're going to have.
Well, we will have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see.
Also worth mentioning, things will change. So you make a couple of trades, this number comes down, obviously with any of these clubs. But it's very interesting because what we just did in 20 minutes, you know the Mariners did a lot more research, got a lot more intel on it.
Yes.
And maybe they know a thing or two about what the financial plans are for this team, what the financial plans are for the Red Sox.
Absolutely.
So,
and the Mariners could go back to that formula like the Astros done and legitimately over this year and next year cut payroll to the place where they're saving an additional $100 million that they're ready to unleash because they love their young talent. That is absolutely possible. And if that's the case, you have more spending power than this team. You have the potential of having more veteran stars than this team does. Then maybe you can sell me a little bit more. If you're going to spend an additional $100 million than you have before, yeah, they got a shot in 21. Absolutely.
All right, and that's what we got. Hope this helps with the muddle that has been this off season. We're going to catch up with you at least one more time before spring training. I'll go ahead and let you know right now. Planning on doing a little bit more of a mailbag. You can ask questions, but what I really want to hear is I'm getting ready to head to Peoria and Japan, which should be an absolute blast. What do you want me to look for while I'm down in Arizona? What kind of coverage do you want from me? What are you interested in? What are the stories? Is it players? Is it systems? New coaches? A lot of the technology that I've talked about, the articles that I've written. Go ahead and shoot that to mynorthwest.com, and we will also have some different calls for this on Twitter. Be thinking about it. We will cover that next time.